Welcome to Khanversations. I'm Muqtedar Khan, your host, and today I'm going to talk about Israel's endless wars with Hamas, with Hezbollah, and with the Houthis, and with Syria, and with Iranian proxies all around it. It is apparent that Israel is now surrounded by Iranian proxies. It's doing incredibly well in terms of the fact that it has killed thousands and thousands of people, including thousands of civilians, women, and children in Gaza, devastated most of the infrastructure. Now it is doing the same thing in Lebanon. But is it winning the war? Is all these battleground victories that Israel is accumulating, killing Hania, the leader of Hamas in Iran, and now killing Nasrallah, the leader of Hezbollah, is it fulfilling any strategic objectives, or it is just a way of telling the Arab neighbors and Iranian proxies that there's going to be a heavy price to pay if you attack Israel? Is that deterrence happening? So these are some of the questions we will discuss, along with asking what of Joe Biden's foreign policy, how successful or how effective it has been in the Middle East since October 7th. We are coming very close to October 7, 2024. It will be 1 year since this whole basically the Middle Eastern mess started with Hamas's attack on Israel. We will talk about all of that, but before that, do subscribe to Khanversations, like this video, press the bell icon, and don't forget to share this video with your friends and your socio-political network. And those of you who are regular viewers of Khanversations are encouraged to become members. You can become a member of Khanversations by pressing the join button. All right, so my first point, I have basically 6 takeaways that I want to make. Is one of the most startling and, shall we say, Twilight Zone kind of discussion that is going on is that clearly we see that with a nearly daily supply of weapons and billions of dollars from the United States, advanced technology, with the presence of US troops and Navy, etc., supporting Israel. And in fact, the United States itself is directly, UK and Britain are directly fighting the naval battle against Houthis on behalf of Israel. So with so much of non-stop participation from the United States, Israel is looking really very strong in the region. It has completely devastated Gaza, and now it's beginning to do the same in Lebanon, destroying infrastructure, killing indiscriminately. But all of this continues while Israel continues to claim that it is fighting an existential battle. So what is interesting is, in spite of the firepower that Israel is displaying, in spite of the amazing amount of unlimited supply of weapons from the United States, advanced technology, thousands of 2,000-pound, 4,000-pound bombs, which have basically laid Gaza barren. In spite of all of this, Israel continues to feel that its existence is threatened. That is the most astonishing aspect of this for those of us who are students of international relations, especially those who are from the realist point of view, where they talk about power as an ultimate guarantor of security. I mean, there's nobody in the region who is as powerful as Israel, because now it's very difficult to distinguish Israel from the United States. So just take Israel's defense budget and its defense capacities and add the entire US defense budget and the US capacity to Israel, and now you have a country of 8 million people, but $900 billion defense budget and the most advanced weapons technology, but it still feels that its existence is in danger. And that is the most startling number one takeaway. And I think that is what Iran has achieved through its proxies. It's like a ring of fire surrounding Israel. So you have Hezbollah in the south, Hamas in the north, Hamas in the south, Hezbollah in the north, and Houthis, who from nearly 2,000 miles away are shooting hypersonic missiles at Israel, and of course targeting ships coming towards Israel. So in that sense, what has really happened is that Iran has created a scenario where Israel feels that it has to continue to fight endless wars to simply exist. This is one of the most bizarrest things. The second takeaway that I have in this is to point out that, and this is about the deterrence issue, it's been nearly 1 year, and with regards to Hamas's terrorist attacks on Israel on October 7th, and then the Israeli response, which has completely destroyed Gaza. There's nothing there. And yet Hamas is showing resilience. It's still out there, it's still fighting, still negotiating. The leader of Hamas, the Sinwar, is still out there alive. And they still have about 100 hostages. So in spite of all the efforts of Israel and the US combined, in early days, the US military was jointly planning these strategies, etc., until basically Netanyahu basically told Biden to go jump. And so at least now there's less public acknowledgement of the extent of US diplomatic and military consultations with Israel on its operations. In fact, many of Israel's operations many of Israel's operations are seen as terrorism. For example, the attack on pages that were used by Hezbollah, which killed several people, several innocent people, even children died as a result of the pager blow up. Even Leon Panetta, the former director of the CIA, called it as a terrorist attack. So the United States is now beginning to distance itself with some of the actions that Israel is taking, saying basically we had no knowledge of it and we were not consulted on it, even though most of the people I see my colleagues in my department celebrating the violence that Israel is perpetrating on Lebanon. So the point that I'm trying to make is that after this nonstop barrage of violence against Hamas for 1 year, with weapons flowing from the US, from India, from Canada, from Germany, from UK, diplomatic support endlessly from the United States, in spite of all of this, there have been no weapons coming to support Hamas in Gaza. During this 1 year, no country has provided weapons or protection or intelligence, etc., to Hamas, yet Hamas survives. So the message, I don't know when the Israelis are going to get it, that you can't kill this movement. So this idea that we can destroy all of Hamas and then establish some other pro-Israeli government sympathetic to the endless military occupation is I think, a futile exercise. And as long as the US is providing weapons, etc., yes, Israel can kill. So one of the things that is not being factored is the resilience that these proxies of Iran, such as Hezbollah, Houthis, and Hamas are demonstrating, which makes the strategic goal of Israel to eliminate them completely in a way impossible to achieve. This is the third war that Israel is launching on Lebanon. It's already, some of its special forces are on the ground. So this is going to be an invasion, a ground occupation. Netanyahu says that he's not going to stay in there. He just wants to go and kill a lot of Hezbollah fighters and then get out of there. He also is, I think, trying to punish Lebanon, which he has done many times in the past. And it has not diminished the support that Hezbollah enjoys in southern Lebanon. In fact, most of that region. So what is also going to happen is this claim that he's not going to occupy Lebanon. I think he might even stay in Lebanon as long as there is a danger that his right-wing coalition will collapse. And then it's an open secret that the moment this war ends, Netanyahu probably is going to go to jail for all the other criminal activities for which he's being indicted. So in order to stay out of jail, he has to keep Israel continuously at war. For one, to keep his coalition together, two, to remain in power, and three, to delay his basically a day of reckoning with his own country's legal system. So I suspect that he's going to continue to remain in Lebanon and stay there occupied. In many ways, what he has done is also expose the hollowness of the Arab nations and their complete helplessness. For the last 1 year, all the Arab states are saying, calling for ceasefire, calling for ceasefire, calling for ceasefire. And even during this horrendous genocidal war on Gaza, Saudi Arabia continued the negotiations with the United States on normalization. For Biden administration, this is their, I guess, ticket to Nobel Prize. This is what they wanted. They want to have some kind of normalization, and the deal they wanted to strike with Saudi Arabia is that the United States, on behalf of Israel, will sign a security guarantee, will become a treaty-bound guarantor of Saudi security, not like the JCPOA. At least MBS is smarter than the Iranians. He wanted a Senate ratified treaty that would guarantee the U.S. support to Saudi Arabia if it was attacked, particularly by Iran. And in return, all he was willing to take was from the Israelis was just say that we will work for the Palestinian state. Don't do anything. Just say that we support a two-state solution, and we will take steps towards creating a Palestinian state. That apparently was enough for MBS, but for Saudi Arabia, he also wanted a nuclear treaty, a civilian nuclear treaty, where he could continue, I guess, at some point to try and convert that into a weapons program. Otherwise, I see no reason why oil-rich Saudi Arabia needs to be so much under the need of a civilian nuclear program. So basically, this is what he was hoping to get, MBS. So these negotiations were continuing, and they still might be. The Biden administration is still hopeful that they would normalize. They think that just because Saudi Arabia will accept Israel or recognize Israel, everything will become normal. What Hamas will disappear, Hezbollah will disappear, and Israel's existential fears will disappear. Saudi Arabia is not a threat at all to Iran. All Saudi Arabia has done is not recognize Israel. But otherwise, Saudi Arabia is of basically total irrelevance to the Arab-Israeli conflict in the last 1 year. The Saudis have done nothing. So I don't understand why the Americans consider the Saudis such a big prize. If you ask me, this is like, the Israelis don't worry about the Saudis, and I don't think people in Gaza are looking up to Saudi Arabia to come and protect them. So I don't understand the Biden administration's obsessive focus on normalizing Israeli relations with Saudi Arabia. At one point, Egypt used to be an important Arab country, a very powerful Arab country, and it has normalized relations with Egypt for several years, and nothing has happened since. All of the problems that Israel faces are continuing with it. Another point that I want to raise is about the fact that during this entire discussion, the root cause of this entire mess is not being discussed. So Netanyahu has not only opened a war in Gaza, started a war in Lebanon, but is also there is a strategic justification for the Lebanon, because on October 7th, while Hamas attacked on October 8th, Hezbollah started shooting rockets. But Hezbollah's argument was the moment the war in Gaza reached ceasefire, it would automatically mean a ceasefire in the north. So if all the efforts to bring about ceasefire that Blinken has been working on with Joe Biden for the last, God knows, 6 months, if Netanyahu had accepted the ceasefire agreement, the hostages would have been back home, and there would have been calm on the northern and the southern borders of Israel, and the 60,000 people from northern Israel who are not able to live in their homes would have been able to go back to their homes in northern Israel near the border of Lebanon. But all of that would have resulted in Netanyahu going to jail. And so we will have to watch as to what is happening. Beyond the Middle East, the legitimacy of many of these Arab countries in the eyes of their own people has diminished significantly. So all the Arab allies of the United States, and particularly those who have tried to make peace with Israel, countries like Bahrain and Morocco and Jordan, and to some extent Saudi Arabia, have lost legitimacy in the eyes of their own citizens. There is a lot of anger in the Middle East, and while it cannot be directed, Israel probably will be directed at their own countries, and many of the plans that these countries may have had of getting perks and benefits from the United States for just recognizing Israel is now probably in the cold storage. The biggest winner of all of this, I think, is China. It is very clear to the rest of the people that the United States is not an independent actor, is not an independent broker. It is essentially the butler for the Israelis. No matter what Biden says, Netanyahu does whatever he wants, often literally mocking Joe Biden. Joe Biden announces that there's going to be a ceasefire in the south with Hamas, and then nothing happens. And he bombs a school or a hospital and kills dozens of Palestinians. And then Biden announced that within 20 hours we're going to have some kind of a ceasefire with Lebanon, and immediately he starts killing Nasrallah. So all of this clearly means that you don't have to be intelligent to understand that the American president is just completely impotent when it comes to Israel. They cannot dictate policy to Israel. They cannot influence Israeli policy, and they cannot stop funding, arming, and supporting Israel. So basically, you do whatever. If you are the American president, you do whatever Israel wants you to do, and you support whatever Israel does, no matter how much you dislike that. This message is very clear in the Middle East, and so more and more countries must be wondering as to what is the value of having an independent relationship with the U.S. if it will be completely sacrificed at the whims and fancies of people like Netanyahu. So I think there is a lot of loss of soft power of the United States. The other part is that the world is a mess under Biden. The war in Ukraine, the war here is just a complete disaster. This is the worst U.S. presidential management of the global order. There is no global order. And the international law and the rule-based order that Biden was constantly bragging about, it is U.S. ally Israel, which is consistently violating all of these rule-based orders, literally committing terrorism in Lebanon. And giving the United States basically no leg to stand on when it comes to rules, laws, international relations. And if the International Criminal Court requests for arrest warrants for Netanyahu are supported by the ICJ, then the United States is going to be looking really very awkward in this situation. And the next time it invokes the term rule-based order, I think it would be appropriate for other leaders to basically throw up. You should carry a bag like on the airport. So the next time Biden or Kamala Harris or Trump talks about rule-based order, just throw up. And finally, one of the things that has happened is that more and more countries are now planning to exercise their strategic autonomy. The door has opened not only for Russia to interfere more in the Middle East, but China. So I think in the long run, China is going to be a geostrategic winner of this. It has stood by Hamas. It has voted against Israel consistently in the UN. Unlike India, which talks from one side of its mouth and acts from the other side, India is basically, it's like, we have a phrase in Hindi called thali ka baigan. So if you have a plate and keep a fruit on it, wherever the plate bends, the fruit goes there, and India has become like that. On one day, it will lament the loss of civilian life in Gaza. On the other day, they will stand with Israel and not vote with Palestine in the UN, abstaining on criticism of Israeli occupation of the Middle East. So basically, they're trying to be in the middle and are ending up being nowhere. They keep talking about itself as a major power and wants a role in global governance, but it has played zero role. Modi tried to make a career for himself in international relations by uttering a phrase saying this is not an era of war to Vladimir Putin, but he has never used the same phrase for Israel and said, look, this is not an era of war. Why not? This man is waging war after war after war, because he knows that if India knows that if it wants more and more support from the US, it needs Israeli support. And because the Arab countries are still willing to engage with India in spite of what Israel does, and India does not challenge Israel, India is basically going to go away, but not be an influential player in the game. So when it comes to the Middle East, India is just not important. But China has become important. China has tried to patch up between Hamas and the West Bank, between the factions, the Palestinian factions. It has met with Hamas leaders. It is supporting the Palestinian cause in the UN more aggressively. It is also continuing to deal with Iran, the Russians. The Houthis shot 2 hypersonic missiles at Israel. Where are the Houthis getting this technology from, if not from Russia? I don't think even the Chinese have the Iranians, I don't think, have that kind of technology. So I think the Middle East has become a big mess, and there's nobody else to blame but Joe Biden and his useless foreign policy, in which he says one thing and does one thing, and he's turned out to be very, very weak. Even Tom Friedman, the New York Times columnist, basically criticized Biden for not being firm. I mean, can you imagine how often Netanyahu has made Biden look foolish, irrelevant? I mean, like this old octogenarian, incompetent, feeble man who's unable to assert his will on the international arena. And a criminal basically not only gets away, but has his hand in his pocket. So basically taking American money, American weapons, and doing whatever he likes and continuing to mock the US. So in many ways, the biggest loser in this entire Middle East is the United States. Its status in the region has definitely diminished, even globally. Its challengers are openly challenging. For the first time, Iran actually shot 300 missiles at Israel with US military there supporting. Yes, Israel was defended, but Iran dared to do that. So that tells you that there is a decline in the capacity of the US to deter the enemies of Israel and the United States. So in that sense, this is from a strategic point of view, this is, in my opinion, a complete failure of US foreign policy. And as far as Israel is concerned, this is Israel's life. This is how it is going to be going on forward. Whatever little international acceptance it had gained through the Abrahamic Accords, I think that has diminished. Many countries in Europe have also turned against Israel. Norway has recognized the Palestinian state. Ireland has done that. Spain has done that. The French keep threatening to do that. So Israel is going to be left with very few friends outside the United States. And increasingly, it's going to feel isolated. And if the arrest warrants are issued for Netanyahu, then that's the end of Israel's amicable relations with Europe, as long as people like Netanyahu are in office. So anyway, these are some of the thoughts. It's difficult to provide a coherent understanding because the place is such a mess. And we don't know what is happening. I don't see an end to war anytime soon. And if Israel does send ground troops deep into Lebanon, then I think you're going to see a very long war in Lebanon. And some of the lessons that the US learned in Iraq as well as Afghanistan are out there. If the Israeli military people want to read, they can read it, but they probably think the Americans are stupid and they are smart. And so they're not going to make the mistakes that America made in Afghanistan or in Iraq. So they think, even though this is their third entry into Lebanon, the first time they went in there, Hezbollah came out of it. Hezbollah didn't exist before Israeli invasion of Lebanon. So I don't know what is going to happen, but I think that unless the Palestinian issue is resolved, this thing is going to go on and on and on. And every new iteration will be worse than the previous one. I dread at what's going to come next. No one could have imagined the horrendous attack of October 7, the scale and the brutality with which Hamas attacked it. And for those of you who think that history started on October 7, let me also remind you that Hamas is not appearing out of vacuum. Hamas came out of nearly this whole century, since 2006-7, brutal occupation of Israel in Gaza and blockade of Gaza for many, many years, more than a decade, including controlling food and water of that area for a long time. Most people describe it as an open-air prison, and the continued expansion of settlements, which everybody, according to international law, consider as illegal. So Israel continues to literally violate international law on a daily basis in the West Bank with American support, American money, American diplomatic cover. So anyway, I'm going to stop with that. I hope you found a lot of things to think about and ponder. So please subscribe to Khanversation, like this video, press the bell icon, and don't forget to share this video with your socio-political network. And until next time, I'm your host, Muqtedar Khan. Take care.